Okay, guys, welcome to our inaugural episode. This is a true American success story. The gentleman that we have here before us, Rodney, is a person that I've known personally for over a decade. He literally is a genius in many different ways, and I think, especially as black men specifically, growing up in a certain environment, it is very encouraging to be around others who have been through certain things and who have overcome certain things. So, Rodney, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. Know you're a very busy guy. You got a lot going on, but for you to take the time to come on the podcast and talk. I really appreciate you, bro.
Anytime, man. I appreciate you reaching out for the podcast to have this conversation. I think it's really important to share gems of knowledge, whatever we learned coming up with the generation coming after us. So, looking
I
forward to this
agree with you
conversation.
100%. I agree with you 100%. And no doubt, the amount that we've learned over the amount of 30 plus years, right, has been quite a bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, some of it's trial and error. Some of it, you listen. Some lessons you listen and you learn. Some of them you learn the hard way. So,
Exactly. And I think especially as black men, a lot of us we see these figures, these successful, whether that is politicians, celebrities, so many different people, but it doesn't always seem tangible, like a real life person that you can touch. Literally, folks, you have two men who are both from inner city, both grew up in families that were challenged financially, both grew up in situations that weren't ideal. Would you agree with that, Rodney?
yep, yeah, less than ideal. And I don't want to say it in any kind of way that's going to shade my parents because they're like the greatest people ever. But at that time period, there were certain challenges that existed.
I agree
And
with you 100%.
in today's world, people are dealing with challenges. So,
Yeah, no doubt. So this is why I'm going to title this the Great American Success Story. You got two African American men growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, not necessarily the best financial situation, who have really put in the necessary effort and time so that we can be the best version of ourselves. And so that's where I want to kind of go with this conversation, Rodney. So for the young men that are watching who grew up in less than ideal social economic situations, some of them in violent communities, some of them in situations where their parents may have struggled with substance abuse or things of that nature. Kind of give us a general framework of how you grew up and what it was like growing up where you were from.
okay, yeah. So I grew up Baltimore City, inner city. So anybody who lived in the city was subject to the things that were happening in the city. Again, my parents had certain challenges. I won't go in too deep into their life, but they had certain challenges thrown upon them that made family life difficult, economically and otherwise. So that was a little bit of a struggle coming up. Shout to moms and pops again for pushing through all of that and raising me to be a man. Um, and a lot of people who come from where we come from, you experience as well, uh, have trauma from these experiences that they have at a young age that can inhibit their progress as they become young men, young women, and want to step out into the world. So,
Yeah,
and
no question about it.
outside of those struggles, I have a big family, 7 sisters. We grew up in Baltimore most of the time. My mother and father separated, and we went to live to California for 5 years with my mom. Um, that was an experience. We came back to Baltimore. Then we had access to both our father and our mother, so things improved just from having access to both parents, even if they didn't have the best relationship at that time. They always were able to. I never felt like I couldn't get to my dad if I was with my mom, and I never felt like I couldn't get to my mom if I was my dad. There was always fluid to go back and forth between them. So I think that was probably really good for my childhood. That helped overcome some of the challenges that they were facing. So shout to them for co-parenting so well, and that helped us as kids with some of the financial burdens, because there were times we lived in trailer park. And again, I don't like to say this because I don't want to put my mom and my dad down. So please don't take it like that, anybody who's listening to it. But there were times where we lived in trailer parks, had to sleep in a car, abandoned clubs. I mean, that 5 years we were with my mom only was extremely rough. And so by the time I came of age, graduating high school at that time, I had not it not been impressed upon me to go to college to have any sort of career. Again, no shade to mom and dad. I'll say that 1,000 times.
So,
Um,
so let's pause for reflection real quick because you
mhm,
you said quite a bit.
yeah,
So, and we're going to this is a group thing here as well. So, not only did we grow up in challenging environments, we didn't see success right in front of our face. Would that be fair to say?
didn't see that, and that was key. Didn't see success right in your
It
face.
wasn't like you could open a door and be like, "Look, I got access to financial wealth, knowledge, and
Yeah,
generations
no,
of
it was
information."
a dude on the street who had $3,000 in a knot. I was like, I would look at him and think, I never saw my father pull $3,000 out of his pocket. So this guy,
Yeah,
but no, that 3,000 was all he had to his name. So it
yeah.
wasn't a
And
lot
we
in the
come
way
for
of.
Oh yeah, and we come from a city where people, they say a lot of negative things, but it's one of those cities where as it can be very interesting from day to day,
Mhm.
but at the same time there is a spirit of fight in
Yeah.
Baltimore. Would you say there's an unbreakable spirit, there's a energy, a mentality where you won't be broken. You
Mhm.
have this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't explain it. It's kind of like you got a little chip on your shoulder, you got a little edge to you. Wouldn't you say that's the case?
Yeah. I would say so for sure. And that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why you and I both, despite the challenges our parents had, we respect them so much because we saw them facing their challenges with that chip on their shoulder, and we imitate that. So,
In Baltimore in the '90s, in the early 2000s, was interesting. Let's just say that it wasn't Beverly Hills, right?
not at all.
So, as we have this conversation, so we know that wealth and information, when it comes to being successful, is not readily in front of us. So, kind of talk to you. So, we grew up in this environment where we see a lot of failure, we see a lot of
Yeah.
bad decisions being made, we see a lot of crime and different things. But what sparked into your mind that you are meant for something bigger? Because a lot of men, we can all talk about the struggle. We can have some sort of, struggle bond or whatever the case, what they
Mhm.
call
Yeah.
it, trauma bonding. But
Yeah.
really, I'm interested because there's a light in your eyes, there's a light in my eyes, and for people to get out of that situation, there has to be something internal built inside of you that says to you, there is something more. When was that moment, Rodney, in your life where you said, there's something more than what I see in front of me? And kind of talk to us about that moment and what it took for you to take that moment and to actually put it into action and to get to you where the level of success that you are now.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like, how we look at life as the cards you're dealt. So in my cards, there was a certain level of poverty in the cards. There was a certain level of this struggle in that. But like you said, on the flip side, I had Ace of Spade as well. I had Two of Spade. I had the Big Joker and the Little Joker. So while like we started this conversation and we mentioned some of the struggles that we had, we mentioned some of the cards in your hand we didn't have. I also had a lot of good cards to play. So it just was a matter of playing the cards that I had. And as long as I played the cards that I had, eventually I was going to have to play that big joker. Eventually, I was going to have to play that too. And what was going to beat the big joker? Nothing was going to beat the big joker. So, and what I mean by that, in real practical terms, for me personally, I already had, and everybody is in the same sort of situation. I already had a certain aptitude, a certain inclination for a certain skill set. It just was a matter of me playing into those things, and playing my full suite of cards, which kind of leads to the idea of actually we'll get to that, but yeah.
Yeah.
um,
So let's talk about, so you're a young man growing up in the city. Let's just get to the point. So in terms of, when did you say, I want more for myself? And what was that journey like? So you want more for yourself. Okay, yeah, we all want more for ourselves, but what did you do to put it in action? Like, I want a nice car, I want a nice house, I want to do this, I want to do that. What was that moment, and what did it take for you to get to, what did you start to do so in order to acquire the skills? Because I think in the inner city where we're from, a lot of us have improvisational skills because you grew up in a rough area. You're going to have to crack some jokes. You're going to have to avoid some violence. You're going to have to be very good at mediation, right?
yeah,
There's a lot of situations that can be sticky. I know my sense of humor kept me out of a lot of situations that could have gone the
yeah,
wrong way, right? So talk about this, the what? Okay, you want more. But what
Yeah.
skills did you practice? What did you practice? Did you go to the library? Did you go to
Gotcha.
did you go to, what did you do to get the skills? What did you have to do?
I was working in construction at the time. If I think about the earliest time where I was like, all right, I got to do something other than this. I was working in construction. I was making maybe $18 an hour, and it was not enough to do the things that I wanted to do. And at the end of every check, it would just be gone, and I wouldn't have any money to do anything, and I had to wait till I get paid again. So I had looked at the job that I was in, and I looked at ways that I could improve, ways that I could move up. And I looked on the job site and I looked at who was making the most money on the job site and what they were doing. And it turned out that the person making the most money that I could get access to was a welding inspector. And I talked to them, asked them how they got their welding inspection, um, what that process looked like. They spelled the process out to me, and then I followed that process, and then I became a welding inspector. So my income went up from, it was $18, and then my very first welding inspection job was like $70 an hour. So it was a huge jump from one to the next. And so, yeah, it was a matter of getting this welding inspection certification, taking this class that it was a 2 week long course that you had to take. You needed 5 years of experience welding before taking this class. So I got my experience in the field, in the machine shop, and out in the construction site. I took this course 2 weeks, took the test, aced the test, and then was able to get the certification. Actually, I did 3 years. If you do 3 years first, they gave you like a junior level certification that then graduated to a senior level in 2 years. So that I went that route. So yeah, that was the moment. I was on that construction site, cold, broke, upset, and sad. And I said, I need to do something else. And I looked first at where I was and who where I was doing well. And I copied what they were doing.
So let's unpack that again for our young brothers. We growing up in a certain environment. We're only going to have access to certain jobs. You're going to, I would say the first thing you need to do is figure out what skill set does the market pay most. What skill
Mhm.
set is needed, right? A lot of times, people want to be athletes, they want to be actors, they want to be YouTubers, which is great. These are great things to do. These are great things to aspire to. But there are other things. And immediately, when you're in a struggle where we're from, you growing up, you're like, what can I get my hands on real quick that's legal, that's going to allow me to get something that's going to give me some opportunities that gives me a wide base of opportunities. It's not just you only have one right. If you do this one job, that's all you're going to do for the rest of your life. You get in construction, which is a wide field, and many
Really,
different opportunities, right?
I
So let's
highly
talk about
recommend
the
construction.
yeah. Let's talk about that. So you're getting $18 an hour. Talk about the exam because me and you actually went to we both from Baltimore, but we're kind of smart. We're not goofballs, right? But we didn't have the ideal perfect family situation. But talk about that, man, because for me, my dad was really hardcore. Like you got to read something every week, right? But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, he's blue collar too, and there's only so much sophisticated manuals and things that you're getting presented with, like at that level. Talk about the transition though from a guy that's working on a construction site and getting that and upping your knowledge base. How hard was that to up your knowledge base? Were you a reader, an avid reader up front before you did all this stuff, or kind of talk about that?
No. Yes, I was in over my head a bit because I wasn't ready to be a welding inspector, but I was a really good test taker. And I knew I could take the test if you gave me the information in 2 weeks to study it. So I was betting on my ability to do that. So and anybody else in the same shoes is going to have to do bet on their abilities in their situation to get themselves out of that situation. While I'm was in construction, I was using construction to get out of construction because I didn't want to be in there. So anybody else who's in you're in this place, you may have to use that place to get out of that place if
Bro,
you
let's
want
stop
to.
right there. You saying a word, bro. See, nowadays people they really there's sometimes you're gonna have to do stuff that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just keep it a buck, bro. There's jobs that I had, I was absolutely miserable. I wanted to, man, I wanted the only thing that made me happy, I'm gonna tell you, bro, back in because we had to work hard. See, this is the thing about growing up in the inner city, not always having a silver spoon in your mouth. You're gonna have to take some jobs that suck. Okay. Now there's jobs you can work from home, but back in the 19s, 1900s, when we were working, you had to do There's certain things you might have to do that you did not want to do, and for me, it was is retail and other things. So let's talk about that because you're doing things that have to suck. But see, this is the thing: you have to look at it. It sucks for you. Don't look at it as going to suck forever. You look at it. It sucks for right now. Didn't that
Mhm.
help you with the time period that you didn't necessarily make the money you wanted, but you knew the
Yeah,
opportunity was right around the corner? That's something that you use for just for the emotional wherewithal to push through. Is that something you used as well?
oh, for sure, for sure. And I think too, just thinking about the difference in lifestyle you're gonna have, and just ruminating on that. But like, go on Zillow and look at houses you can't afford. Go look at cars you can't afford. Look at clothes or whatever. Like it's okay to want things. And I think for Black people in particular, young Black men, we typically have everything that we need besides money. If you just go grab a random Black dude off the street of Baltimore, I bet you he's mildly athletic. He probably thinks he can rap. He probably has a decent family, probably has a decent job, but doesn't have a lot of money. And people say, "Oh, money doesn't buy happiness." For a lot of African Americans, that's really the only thing that they need. So I
Yeah,
would I would picture a different lifestyle, um, and that's what got me through. I would just
bro.
imagine.
Another word, bro. Let's talk about
Mhm.
that because, bro, when I was growing up, growing up in public housing and things of that nature, I literally couldn't fathom the idea of having my own apartment. And I remember in my
Mhm.
20s, in my middle part of my 20s, being able to have my first apartment and it being from hard work and developing the skills. As an example, I didn't go to college. Did you go to college?
Mm-mm.
Neither of us went to college and both of us doing pretty good.
Yep.
So knowing so you have sometimes you have to take an assessment of the skills that you already currently have. A lot of times
Yes.
when you're in a struggle, it's what's on hand. It's oodles and noodles. It might be some water. It might be that dollar store ginger ale. It's what's on hand. You
Yep.
can't get the Cavassier. You can't get some nice 18. I don't know what people drink nowadays. I'm not a drinker, but you don't have access to those higher, finer things in life. But there's certain things that are readily available. That's water, that's ginger ale, that's the dollar store, that maybe Arizona tea to keep you mentally focused. I remember what I would do for myself when I was in the struggle in my early 20s. I would have Arizona iced tea and Swedish fish, bro. Arizona, that raspberry Arizona iced
That is
tea,
horrible.
that raspberry or the watermelon one or the
Big sugar.
they had the mango one. You remember the
Mhm.
mango Arizona
Mhm.
iced tea? So and every Friday I didn't have much, but I had enough couple dollars, and I would be so happy. I'd be like, man, this is so good. It's like a
Lovely.
dollar 99, a little yellow bag with the Swedish fish, and it kept me mental. I said, you know what? One day I'm gonna be able to buy like the fun size, and I'll be able to eat as much
Yeah.
as I want. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I did the exact same thing because I picture myself in a nice apartment in a nice neighborhood with a decent
Mhm.
car. When I say decent car, I mean decent car. It ain't no Lexus. It ain't
Mhm.
no Mercedes. It is a starter car. A lot of times when you do not have that silver spoon, and we see the Instagram influencers, and we see the millionaires, and we see the celebrities, they have a lot of things that the average person just doesn't have access to. So again,
Mhm.
quick skill assessment for you. You knew that you were in you construction skill. You took that construction skill and said there are other parts of this construction that I can take my machinist understanding with. So I already have some skills here. Let me upskill and do that. For me, I'm a great communicator. I love people. So I said, what
Mhm.
is the highest level of interpersonal skills? What industry? What will allow me to be the best version of what I can do? The highest level of interpersonal skills or talkers. Well, that's
Yep.
sales, right?
Yep.
So that's something I have readily available. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have any sort of certification, but I do have some relative simple common sense, a little bit, right? I have the ability to communicate at a high level. And so sometimes in the hood or in a situation where you don't have much, what is natural to you? You could have a lot of charisma. Maybe sales is a great way for you. Maybe you're a handy person. You like to do lawns, you like to work on cars, you love trucks, you love those things. Great. Okay, cool. So do that. Maybe you love sports. Okay, cool. Can you coach the YMCA team, the
Yep.
local team? Can you build some relationship with the local coaches so that maybe they'll put in a good word for you and maybe they can
Mhm.
help you with a good scholarship into a college? You could become an assistant coach. You could be maybe an offensive, defensive coach and work your way up. There are small micro things that you can do to get yourself to that level. Just because you don't have everything that everybody else have, you don't have that silver spoon. There are certain things that we innately have, that we generally have, that we can pivot. Sometimes we
Yep.
got to think very micro. Sometimes we get like, oh, I want to get to the mansion in the car. That's true, but okay. I mean, we broke. We living in a row house in East or West Baltimore. What am I going to do? What do I have available skill set that I have?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I may be funny. You might comedy might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you might be. That's a tough one too. And I think one of the things I struggled with as a young man was not knowing what skills they were to have. I didn't know that an engineer was a thing until I was maybe 17, whatever. So I think too now we're in a much more connected world than it was 20 years ago or whenever ago. So a young man today has much more exposure to what his skill might be. I was 26 before I found out I was good at mathematics. I didn't know because I had never been in a situation where I needed to do it. So, exposing yourself to a bunch of different things and trying to find where your skill set is going to be good. And especially if you're young, if you're in your teens, if you're in your 20s, don't expect anything to be figured out anytime soon. It's okay to jump from job to job to job to job. Like that's what you want to do. Jump from job to job to job to job to job. Figure out what you're good at. Fail often. All of that
Yeah.
stuff.
And one thing I want to say is okay to jump from job, but make sure that when you leave that job, you've acquired a skill.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
learned something because just jumping job to job and ain't learned nothing, you're gonna be broke for the rest of your life. For me, when I would learn, like for
Strategically.
me, my job was working retail, stocking shelves or whatever. When I was younger, what did I learn? I learned accuracy. I learned consistency. I learned
Yes.
responsibility
Mhm.
because them shelves need to be faced correctly. They need to look organized. By the end of the day, when management comes in and look at that shelf, I learned consistency and I
Mhm.
learned reliability. That's something I early learned. Then step two, when I got my first sales job, right, a commission sales job, what did I learn? Professional presentation. I learned how to communicate, how to be assertive, how to develop um, leadership skills and things in consulting. Very low. I was like, okay, so if I tell someone this, how to say things correctly, tonality,
Yep.
right? How to truly have a conversation with a person, because especially when you're in your early 20s, don't nobody want to listen to you or respect you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
how can you connect with that person? How can you build connection and relationship with that person? So every job you need to figure out. I would say this to a young man, a young brother, and every job you need to learn one skill. If you got 3 jobs in a year, you need to have 3 new skills. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say you want to be somewhere where you can learn something and understanding that job, that dead end job that you might be working, you think you ain't learning something. Like you said, them stocking them shelves, you're learning something, and that's why companies want to see you work those jobs. Big companies gonna want to see you work those jobs before they hire you. They want to know that you know how to fill out a report, respond to an email. You can learn that on those jobs. So,
Agree. No press, no bounce. So let's get into the one of the greatest American success stories I've ever heard. So Baltimore City. I mean, situation with a trailer park, situations living in a car, all types of stuff. So now you've learned. You took this test. You put in the effort. You did your 2 weeks. You took what you already know at a
mhm.
job where people be like, man, ain't no real upward mobility. No, you looked at other opportunities. Some folks, if you're coming from where we're coming from, always go to the company website. Look at who's making the most money and how can you get there? Find a mentor or someone else that's already doing a job. And
Mhm.
just say, hey man, I know you're busy. Let's just get lunch. Do you mind if I go catch you for 15 minutes? And a lot of times old heads who are really cool, they'd be like, hey man, I like this young dude. Be likable. I like this young dude. You know what? I'm gonna give you some game. I'm gonna give you some game. I don't like young people generally, but you know what? I'm gonna take your nappy self and we're gonna have a conversation about some stuff. I'm gonna tell you the real that you're not gonna hear on the, you know what I mean? And now they're giving you this game, and now you can take that game and never navigate where you need to go.
Yeah, I'm about to give you the game right now. I'll give you the strategy that I used after then becoming a nuclear welding inspector. So I had a huge pay up increase from that.
From
Um,
$18 to $70 an hour.
70, and then some jobs even more than that. And then some, it was contract, they would pay you 150, 200 a day, additionally untaxed per diem. So it's really not, I'm saying that to say that that's how nice it can be if you put a little bit of work. But it didn't stop there. So construction was not my passion. I didn't want to stay in construction. I wanted to get very, very hard work. And it required me to be away from my son who had just been born. He was just a few months old. So I needed a different career. At this time, I was about 26 years old. I had no college education whatsoever. I didn't know a lick about anything academic. And I decided that the thing that I could teach myself was electronics. I could teach myself, and I didn't know if I could, but I thought I could. So I started to study electronics. I used the money that I was making in construction I built myself on the job site a lab table, brought it in home, and then I built a little lab in one of the rooms in my house and started inventing day in and day out. I would get off, go into work at like 4 a.m., get back home at like 7 p.m., and I would study from 7 p.m. to 12 midnight. And that 5 hour period, and I would study in between every in between moment at work. If I have my workbook right now, you would see my inspection notes, and then you would see in between computer science study and mathematics and all that kind of stuff. So every spare moment, I mean, every spare moment, I was using it to study because that was the only way I was going to transition out of this. Now, mind you, I'm working 6, 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours
I
a
remember,
day,
bro, talking to you. I was like, this
two,
dude.
2 hours away from my house, and I have a baby boy at home. But at this point, my son was the motivation. And if you ever have kids, you're going to become Superman, Superwoman. My son
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
motivation. So, but so here we are. We were in a situation, the construction. I didn't want to be in construction, so I used construction to rise up. Once I rose up, I poured all of the money from construction into learning and teaching myself the new trade that I actually wanted to have. And then I started looking for a job in that field. And that process, I think, that's where the game is. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit when I tell you guys how I did that. So
Yeah, well, go for it, man.
here's the secret. Here's how you become a physicist, a principal engineer with absolutely no experience and no degree. I went on Indeed.com and I typed in the jobs that I thought I might want: physicist, engineer, and I sorted them from highest paying to lowest paying, because why would you sort them any other way? I took maybe the top 20, 30 jobs and I looked at all of their requirements, and I pulled all of the requirements onto a list.
Before
The
Chat
ones that
GPT, by
repeated,
the way.
this is before chat. I wish I had chat GPT. You guys are lucky. And I sorted them in a list. The ones that appeared the most, this is 2018. The ones that appeared the most, I put them at the top and had them in order of importance. From that point, I did a project that covered what was on that list. So a college is going to give you a rubric and say, if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a physicist, this is what you need to know. I went to the jobs and looked at what they said they wanted, and I said, this is what I need to know if I want to be a physicist. All of these companies have said this is what they want from their physicists. So in my opinion, that's what makes a physicist. So I studied everything that I needed to study, and I did projects that I could have physical proof that I understood this principle on the requirements list. So when I went to an interview with a new company, I didn't have a degree, but I had a combination of projects that covered their entire requirements list. It's very, very difficult for them to say no. And at one point, I quit my job at construction. Now, I saved up a lot of money to be able to do that. Don't just quit your job stupidly. I was making tons of money. I was pouring it into my learning, and I had planned to take off for 2 years to focus on studying. 10 months after my planned quit, I landed a job as an applied physics in a lab up in Maryland, Baltimore. So that was the process of how that went. Going on Indeed, figuring out what the requirements of the with jobs that exist right now, what they actually say they want, is what you should be learning. So
I love that. So again, going from a welder to it was a certified inspector. What's it called? What's the specific title?
uh, nuclear quality control inspector.
Nuclear quality control inspector. So that's big leaps. And think about this, folks. With ChatGPT and all the man, for me, I had to find books about how to win friends and influence people, the art of persuasion. These are books that I read. Never Split um, you know,
Man, thank you. That's my favorite.
you know what I'm saying? And I would go and listen to hear David Goggins and E.T. the hip hop preacher and all these inspirational guys. You know what I mean? Like back in those days, and encouraging yourself, because when you look at the struggle, when you look at it, and sometimes you don't always see the progress you're making, and it feels like, man, I'm getting there, but it's a little slow, or you just get, you get a setback or whatever, and you just get overwhelmed. You're like, man, am I ever going to get there? And it's like, yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. But your emotion don't always look the same for people outside looking in. They may be like, man, he went from it's for $18.70, but to you, you're like, man, I wanted to get to the Corvette
Mhm.
over here or there.
Yeah,
And mind you, we're in our mid to late 20s. We going from 18 and 19 and 20, and now we're in our 30s. So it is a process. It is a
it takes some
process.
time.
And
It does.
so just to kind of, we'll probably do a part two with you because we love talking with you and having you on. When did you get your first six figures? So from growing up in Baltimore and all these different things, and again we'll do a part two because we got so much more to talk about and
Yeah.
inspire these young men. And this is the only, literally, this is just our love letter to the young us. If we were us in this situation, what we tell ourselves, and we hope that you guys find some value in it. There's going to be more details, more stuff there. But when did you make? So we went from, again, growing up in the inner city. When did you hit your first six figures in life?
The first six figures was when I was 26. The first job that paid six figures, I didn't stay that whole time. I think it was in 2015. So I was 24.
2015. So
Yeah.
24, inner city Baltimore, tough economic situations, not ideal family situations. And at the age of 25, in the greatest country in the world, as far as I'm concerned, that's why I have my American flag, from the city that many people say,
USA. US.
love the USA, and many people who will say, "Oh, you're from Baltimore. You a black dude from Baltimore. You don't know what you're talking about. You ain't making no money. You capping," as the young people say. I don't know if that's still popular, but you were able to do it. But it took a certain level of discipline, a certain level
Oh,
of
yeah.
hunger, a certain level of focus, understanding what you have available to you right now, taking advantage of situations that you're already in, and then being able to apply that situation and mold it to a situation that's more ideal for what you ultimately want. Again, it's almost saying it's like making lemons into lemonade type situation. This is what's in front of me. I don't got everything, but I know I can make lemonade, and eventually it might be something even more valuable in the future. So before we finish this part one, what would you want to tell us as we go into part two in the future? The
Yeah,
people listening.
you know, put me on the spot. All right. I would say that we are all thought evolved beings. We're all a result of what we think on a day to day basis. If you think good thoughts, you will have a good life. You cannot possibly do something that you didn't think of first. Your life is a result of the thoughts that you have in your mind. So
I
keep your
love
thoughts
that.
clean, your life will be clean.
I love that. I love that. I love that, man. That's phenomenal. We're going to come back on a part two because we know people's attention spans are low. So we'll we'll come back on a part two. We appreciate you guys. All right. And again, be good, do the best that you can, and use what's in front of you. We're out. All right. We're going to end this here.